it is the dark soul thou desirest, then seek Filianor's church at the base of the cliff. There wilt thou the sleeping princess waken. Her slumber is a deceit, a lid covering an overgrown privy, a prop to keep thee from the dark soul of thine desire.
For the pygmies who took the dark soul, the great lord gifted the ringed city, an isolated place at the world's end. The pygmies saw the ringed city as a gift from the Lord of Sunlight and eagerly accepted it, without realizing that it may become their prison. You see, the ringed city was Gwyn's attempt to keep the dark soul secured in the location of his choice. The location of his choice was a remote desert. Gwyn faced two major problems. One, making sure that the dark soul would not go running wild with humanity. And two, breathing life into the desert. To keep alignments at bay and to sprout life, Gwyn asked his daughter, Filianor, for help. Filianor was the daughter of Fina and the sister of Guinevere. Just like her sister, Filianor was a symbol of bounty and fertility. She thus had an innate ability to keep a region prosperous and its harvest rich, even in a desert. Moreover, Filianor took after her mother, seeing how Filianor's benevolence knew no boundaries. She would be able to heal and cure whatever maladies affected the ringed city. To help Filianor in keeping the city from potentially drowning in a curse, Gwyn built a giant purging monument for the inhabitants to absolve their sins. He also placed signs which represented Velka, sin, and sacrifice all around the city, as a reminder to the settlers not to fall prey to the seductions offered by the dark soul. To officiate things, the Lord of Sunlight gave the furtive pygmy a crown, which rendered that pygmy and his lineage royalties of the ringed city. Gwyn also gave a Chloranthy ring to the pygmy. The ring represented Filianor and her ability to line the land with verdure. Filianor was the matriarch of the church, but in the eyes of the pygmies, she was the saint of the ringed city. To keep Filianor safe, Gwyn assigned Meteor, a descendant of the Archdragons raised by the gods, to be Filianor's personal bodyguard. Moreover, Gwyn implored Shira, daughter of the Duke, to stay in the ringed city to protect Filianor. He even gave Shira a lightning arrow, a miracle for dragon slaying, to keep Meteor in check. You know, just in case. One of Gwyn's biggest fears, though, must have been the wrong people getting a hold of the pygmies and putting their hands on the dark soul. So Gwyn picked some of his best men to defend the ringed city. Combatants such as Leto, a strong eccentric knight who was a close friend to the giants, and even Havel the Rock. Warriors such as the ringed knights, who set out to slay the dragons and whose contributions were never lauded, stood guard over the ringed city. Gwyn loved his daughter very much. It hurt him deeply to leave her, but he promised Filianor that he would come back for her when the day came. As time passed, the city received visitors, some of who would stay behind and live out their days in the ringed city. Not every passerby had good intentions, though. There is a dark fable about a company of knights who were sent to the ringed city on an old king's orders. The knights sought the dark soul, but were so soundly crushed they had little choice but to swear themselves to the Judicator Giant. Although outside threats were under control, there were internal cracks taking shape in the Ringed City. You see, snakes lived in the Ringed City as well. Those serving Darkstalker Koth, secret traitors of the gods, were plotting, quietly rebelling. The serpents convinced Meteor that he was more a snake than he was royalty, and that he should follow his serpent brothers and serve the dark. Meteor took a bite of the forbidden fruit and became known as the Dark Eater. Perhaps he swallowed a pygmy whole for his dark soul. Or perhaps the serpents had a stash of treats made of darkness for the dragon. Either way, the snakes, with all their audacity, moved statues of themselves with almost dragon bodies to the cave where Meteor spent his time. The symbols put in place by Gwyn, which were meant to prevent the inhabitants of the Ringed City from falling into darkness, were now obscured by sculptures of the serpents. It even looked like they were laughing at and mocking the biggest crest in the entire room. The darkness started spreading. Eventually, abyssal swamps formed from which locusts emerged. The white-faced locusts were meant to beckon men to the dark with sermon, but most of them were unable to think past their own stomachs.
Many of us are by the fire, forsaken. I speak of thine kind and mine. Behold this city. We are kindred, but like two eyes which gaze upon the other. Fear not the dark, my friend, and let the feast begin.
Those preachers must have been successful in their recruitment, since an abundance of merkmen rose from the depth, enveloped by a black dampness and imbued with the strength of the dark. Corruption surfaced, forming crystals that grew atop structures and beings. With the spread of the abyssal swamp, the flora started to fade. The more they sinned, the more the inhabitants of the Ringed City asked for absolution. The Purging Monument became overflown with curses. Attempts to invade the city in search of the Dark Soul recurred. It was considerably harder for the knights to fight back, since Meteor was no longer on their side. Invaders kept coming. The swamp kept expanding. The sinners kept sinning. A vicious cycle had the Ringed City in its grasp. Filianor, who was the heart and soul of the Ringed City, felt each thing that happened to the isolated place at the world's end with every fiber of her being. And so, it happened. Filianor, the healer, the goddess of fertility, the saint of the city, simply perished in her sleep. A royal pygmy took notice of Filianor's death and started telling others. He was, however, quickly discredited by Shira and the Adjudicator as they accused him of being a madman. Although that pygmy was Shira's companion, her loyalties lied with the gods of Anor Londo. So she put the Mad King to rest before he could reveal the truth about the princess to anyone else. Realizing that they needed to act quickly, the Judicator and Shira placed an illusion upon the Ringed City. The illusion would make it seem like Filianor was still alive and well, slumbering in her tower, reposing on the egg. The Ringed City would continue to serve its purpose, by preventing the pygmies from leaving, and by keeping outsiders from finding them. The mirage, though, was not perfect, as it wasn't showing the Ringed City during its prime. Rather, it was a window into the past, and it showed the stages through which the ringed city went as it crumbled piece by piece. Forces were mobilized to make sure that no one disturbed the sleeping princess. The Judicator created a new faction, the Spears of the Church, devoted entirely to watching over the princess' slumber at any cost. Argo proclaimed that such was the king's decree. Whether Gwyn was aware of the events taking place in the Ringed City is, of course, up for debate. As long as no one entered the tower where Filianore slept, as long as no one tried to touch the egg that she was holding, the illusion would persist. However, if someone did disturb her slumber, they would witness what the Ringed City has become. A deserted place in the middle of nowhere. They would see withered pygmy lords whose blood has long ago dried. They would gaze upon Filianore, once a beautiful princess cherished by many, now a mummified corpse, alone in a secluded tower at the world's end. Perhaps even in death, and to this day, Filianore is waiting for her father to keep his promise. Hi everyone, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone for all the encouragement. I really appreciate everyone taking the time to share their ideas, discuss lore theories, and help me refine the lore. I also want to give a shout out to TGA Dave and Ravenheart for the podcast. It was super enlightening and super fun, and everyone should check them out. They have Twitches and stuff. Also, I would recommend everyone watch The Ringed City Ending Explained by Butchamus. It really clears things up a lot, and it's really awesome. Well, that's it. Thanks so much, and I'll see you later.